My unit at 77A flooded constantly with an upload of raw sewage consistent with my neighbors flushing their toilets in heavy rainfalls. Floating pieces of fecal matter, even eaten food, toilet paper, and debris filled my bathtub, overflowing onto my floors throughout my apartment. The everyday smell of a foul odor of feces that would normally cause someone to cringe upon smelling it became the dreadful smell we endure daily. Our reality was not a Folgers and waking up in your cup moment. Instead, our mornings consisted of walking through contaminated sewer water to reach the restroom, to brush our teeth, and wash our faces.
I wasn't with you yesterday because I was invited to attend a U.S. Senate hearing chaired by U.S. Senator Jon Ossoff. He is chair of the Human Rights Subcommittee. Families forced to live in utter filth, children having to endure the fecal matter of their neighbors in plumbing and everything else. This is going to be difficult to listen to, but it's important that you do. Let me take you to the opening statements.
Now, here's the background. 5 months ago, as chair of the Human Rights Subcommittee, I launched an investigation into the mistreatment of families by landlords in Georgia and across the country, and in particular on threats to the safety of children who dwell in dangerous living conditions. And what we found thus far is that too often landlords and large property owners and managers are securing and receiving massive federal subsidies while subjecting vulnerable families and children to dangerously unsafe and unsanitary living conditions. The subcommittee has conducted site visits and interviewed nearly 100 tenants, landlords, maintenance staff, housing attorneys, and policy experts across Georgia and the nation. The staff has reviewed court records, resident complaints, housing inspection reports and work orders, photo and video evidence, and extensive correspondence between tenants, landlords, and federal housing officials. We've heard from families who live in apartments plagued by severe mold and pest infestations, who lack basic plumbing, or whose floors were so rotten that they collapsed. We heard from a tenant whose child fell through a collapsed floor and another whose child was bitten by a rat. We've interviewed tenants who described balconies falling off their buildings, fires, violent assaults and shootings, inadequate safety and security infrastructure, elevator outages that left elderly Americans trapped in their homes without access to food or medication, and children who became sick from mold and sewage exposure. Yet the subcommittee heard time and time again that when many of these tenants asked their landlords for help, that help never came. And worse, they sometimes reported facing retaliation or eviction. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights includes a human right to an adequate standard of living, including housing. A home is more than a place to sleep. It must be a place of safety and of security. But for too many Georgians and for too many children in Georgia, home is instead a place of peril.
I want to put up the pictures of some of the exhibits introduced to the record. I'm going to explain each picture to you. I want to remind everyone that the housing we are talking about is subsidized by HUD. It is subsidized by our taxpayer dollars, which means the private company that owns the property. They are receiving money from the federal government and making people live like this. The picture of the bathtub. You know what that is you're looking at? Feces. Human feces. From backed up plumbing of other individuals inside of the apartment complex. One of the tenants described that her daughter was inside of the bathroom, taking a shower. All of a sudden, fecal matter started coming up from the drainage. We're not talking hours. We're not talking days. We're talking months. And for some of them, they have been experiencing this for years. You see where the shower curtain is? And there are bags that are taped up to the ceiling. That's because the ceiling fell on a child inside of the bathtub. One woman described that her floors are so caved in that her and her children have to hop on the beams in order to walk through their home. They are retaliated against when they complain. They are told they have no voice. They are told they have no remedy. And then they are typically hit with these fines that are erroneous in order to get them to leave. Once again, these corporations that own the properties are in fact subsidized by housing and urban development, the federal government. Yesterday, U.S. Senator Jon Ossoff, chairman of the U.S. Senate Subcommittee on Human Rights, held a hearing on the mistreatment of Georgia families by landlords and threats to the safety of children in dangerous condition. Here's what some of those family members said.
In late 2018, I moved into Church Street Villages to ensure I was able to afford to pay my monthly bills without assistance from family members due to complications from my previous cancer diagnosis. I moved into Unit 77A with a feeling of security and ease, thinking this was a safe, secure environment for myself and my children. Shortly after moving into my unit, I started to hear loud bubbling noises erupting from my pipes, centering from my bathtub drain. The sounds mimic the sound your stomach makes, as if the room is silent and a person hasn't eaten in a while. Little did I know, the rumbles would grow into a massive plumbing issues. My unit at 77A flooded constantly with an upload of raw sewage consistent with my neighbors flushing their toilets in heavy rainfalls. Floating pieces of fecal matter, even eaten food, toilet paper, and debris filled my bathtub, overflowing onto my floors throughout my apartment. The everyday smell of a foul odor of feces that would normally cause someone to cringe upon smelling it became the dreadful smell we endure daily. Our reality was not a Folgers and waking up in your cup moment. Instead, our mornings consisted of walking through contaminated sewer water to reach the restroom, to brush our teeth and wash our faces, while inhaling the vile-smelling odor, fumes of bowel movements drifting in the bathtub. Thoughts about the quality and sanitation of our water remained a constant and consistent thought in our minds. 4 months of daily exposure to raw sewage, floating discarded food, particles, fecal matter, and blood was extremely hurtful and inhumane. Despite reports to management, my daughter was taking a shower while my upstairs neighbor flushed her toilet. The content of her bowel movements covered my daughter's feet while she attempted to take a shower to clean her body. Instead, found her feet covered in feces. This was a horrifying experience for my daughter and myself as a mother. At that moment, I felt the pain of being unheard all over my body, leaving me empty without recourse or support. My children and I live in uninhabitable conditions after consistent attempts to get management to address the severe plumbing issues related in a merry-go-round of emails to management, phone calls to the National Housing Compliance, leading to a dead end of hopelessness. After repeated attempts to seek assistance, my unit in 77A erupted with a nonstop flow of raw sewage that flowed over into my neighbor's unit, underneath the floor and baseboards. As my neighbors assisted in attempting, to salvage our things.
These are all very brave women who are testifying about their previous and current conditions. This is another tenant, Ms. Odom. Here it is.
My kids and I moved to Heritage December 2019. As happy as we were to have our own place, it quickly turned into a nightmare, a constant nightmare. It all started in January 2020. From 2020 to 2023, my bathroom ceiling leaked every few days. I did it as I was supposed to, which was to call the office to put in work orders. Each time the management company told me it wasn't a leak. They blamed my upstairs neighbor, saying she was letting the toilet overflow or didn't have a shower curtain or the shower mat, and the kids were splashing water on the floor. None of those excuses made sense to me because of how much water was leaking and how much damage it caused. After constant leaks, my bathroom ceiling actually collapsed. This happened over and over, sometimes repeatedly in the same week. If it collapsed on a Friday and I called the emergency hotline, no one would show up until that Monday. So that leaves me and my children having to find somewhere to stay since that was our only bathroom. The only thing the management company ever did was replace the ceiling panels, but that didn't actually fix the problem. When the ceiling would collapse, the debris would fall into the toilet and clog it. It would cover the tub and get all over the floor. One time, my six-year-old daughter had no choice but to relieve herself in the sink because the toilet was full of the ceiling debris. This has caused unbelievable trauma for me and my kids. To hear your child cry because they're scared to go in the bathroom by themselves, that makes me feel less of a mom because my kids live in this environment.
I want to remind everyone this is by no fault of their own. This is about the conditions they are living in and the property management company and owners refuse to fix. Here's the testimony, partial testimony of Ms. Hines.
My time in Southwood, my ceiling has repeatedly failed, collapsed 4 or 5 times in 2023 alone. And for several months, I have visited the rent office or manager's office daily to report the needs for repairs. Each time the building only temporarily repaired my patches in my ceiling and everything, such as cutting a hole in the ceiling and replacing the ceiling panel that fell rather than repairing the ongoing leak that's inside of the ceiling. Sometimes maintenance just cuts a hole in the ceiling and does not return for weeks or months. I have taped trash bags to the gaping hole in my bathroom to cover up the hole because my children are scared to bathe in the bathroom. In the spring of 2023, my kitchen and bathroom floor started to collapse. You can feel the vinyl sinking between the beams when you stand on it. And you can see the beams poking through the floor. My sons and I have to jump from beam to beam because we're scared. I'm mostly scared that they could fall through the floor at any given time while they're using the bathroom. Okay, it's caving in, and I feel at the moment I will be, or my kids will be, in the basement of the floor. Sorry. Ooh.
Once again, these properties are subsidized by the federal government. We looked at the record. The record shows that all of these properties passed their inspections. Put up the attorney who has been advocating for tenants' rights, Esther Graff Radford, tenants' rights attorney, said during her testimony, quote, "The sad truth is subsidized landlords in Georgia who are getting this government money often are not providing the basic housing that we, the taxpayers, are paying for. I frequently see that landlords are neglecting maintenance to the point that they are endangering tenants. While most of my clients are in Metro Atlanta, I get calls from people across the state. I frequently see situations where sewage is backing up in people's apartments because of old and broke down plumbing. Not once or twice, but chronically, to the point that families are expected to live in homes that are continually soaked in raw sewage and have no working bathrooms." Who's the Secretary of HUD? Well, Ms. Fudge is. She's the Secretary of HUD. When I spoke to Senator Ossoff this morning, I posed the question to my dear brother. When are you going to put her under oath? Now, I understand these issues with HUD have been long existing prior to the Secretary's appointment. None of that matters when you accept the job. None of that matters when you take that oath. Ma'am, I have respect for you, but these are your sisters who are primarily suffering. And by extension, you have this great obligation to run HUD in a way that actually advocates and holds landlords accountable to the taxpayer dollars that they are receiving. This agency is funded to the tune of billions, ladies and gentlemen, with a B. With a B. How in the hell are these properties passing inspection? All right. Sharon, I understand there's a bureaucracy involved, and sometimes it takes a lot to turn the ship around, but damn it, you got children who are about to die and already have been injured because of this level of inaction from HUD and the landlords. What say you?
1 out of 10 people who's just exposed to raw sewage, Dr. Richey, will catch an infectious disease. So the odds here for people who are constantly living in this, their feet touching it, their bodies immersed in it, well, the odds are much higher. This has to be treated like the emergency it is.
That's right.
And I'm not talking about fines. I see criminal behavior, criminal negligence. I think it's time for HUD and Ms. Fudge to take over, pass something where you can come in and take over these properties from landlords who don't wish to make reasonable repairs that let people in America have working plumbing. That is what you're talking about. That was what your trip to DC uncovered. It's unfathomable.
Yeah. Thank God for people like Senator Ossoff, who provided, a very good man, provided this opportunity, made sure it was exposed, working with the banking committee that provides oversight to HUD directly. And naturally, we will update the audience as the story concludes and the investigation is presented.